Okay, everybody. So we sort of finished up photosynthesis with the escape room. Hopefully, you had some fun with that yesterday in class. And now we're moving on to sort of the complementary chemical process um, to photosynthesis, and that is cellular respiration. So remember, in the past, I've talked about glucose as being like the $100 bill, right? And photosynthesis is really the printing press for $100 bills. The whole purpose of photosynthesis is to make glucose, lots of it. And the reason it's important to make bonds is because bonds store energy. So when you're making bonds, you store energy. Well, now we have to start talking about releasing those bonds, or releasing the energy in those bonds and breaking those bonds. But there are issues with doing that strictly with glucose because of the issues that happen. If you break the glucose bonds, there's a lot of energy, a lot of power there. It causes potential problems for the cells, damaging to the cells. So this is where cellular respiration comes in. Cellular respiration is a cellular process taking place in all types of cells that we've talked about so far. So not just animal cells, but also plant cells. And this process is in 3 stages. So remember, photosynthesis was 2 stages. This one is 3 stages. And I want you to be thinking about the same kinds of things. Where is it taking place? Right? Remember, structures lead to functions. And what is happening in each of those stages in terms of chemical reactions? What's going into each of the stages, what's coming out of each of the stages. So just like we talked about in photosynthesis, right? You get 2 big stages, light dependent, light independent. And then we talked about where is the water coming in, where is the oxygen coming out, where is the carbon dioxide going in, where is the glucose coming out, and in what particular part of the organelle is that happening. So the same ideas I want you to be thinking about here as we go into cellular respiration. So there's 3 stages. Glycolysis, and it's right in the name there, to break up glucose, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. So you probably got to this point yesterday, and it's some reminders, right, that energy is stored in chemical bonds, the foods we eat, right? And when the bonds are broken, we can use that energy. But remember, we have to convert it into a usable form. So $100 bills are great unless you walk up to the vending machine and it won't take $100 bills. Now you have to have a currency that's usable. That's where your ATP comes along. So cellular respiration, again, is a chemical reaction. So look at the chemical reaction here, and it should look pretty darn familiar to you, the parts of it anyway, right? Pay special attention to where the products and reactants are in comparison, in contrast, I guess, to photosynthesis. So a lot of the same players involved, right? There's some water, there's some carbon dioxide, there's some oxygen, there's some sugar. So very related complementary processes. Some vocabulary that you should be aware of. Aerobic versus anaerobic. Aerobic meaning pertaining to air, and in this case we're talking about oxygen, and anaerobic pertaining to not air, right? So without oxygen. So part of these steps take place and require oxygen, and some don't. And that's what we're going to get into. That's what I got into in the notes yesterday. So hopefully you were able to fill these notes out as you went from watching the video, but just in case, you can check your work here. Stage 1 of cellular respiration is glycolysis, and this literally means to break down glucose. Lyse, to break or split apart. Glyco, meaning glucose, sugar. So literally to break it down. And it breaks it down into a chemical known as pyruvic acid. Oxygen is not needed, to start this reaction, so this is considered anaerobic. Where is it taking place? In the cytoplasm. So you can see here the numbers. You have to put in some investment to get something out. And glycolysis doesn't net us a lot of ATP. So this is a high cost. If you really need quick energy, this is a good way to do it. But you're not getting it done very efficiently. It would be like taking that $100 bill and you really need some ones and you go to get some change and you can only find somebody, like I said in the video, I think, that has 50 ones. Well, you're taking a $50 loss, but you really need those ones. So it costs you a lot to get what you need. And that's how it is for the cell sometimes, right? The cell needs ATP all the time, nonstop. And if you don't have enough oxygen around, it can do this process anaerobically and it can get it quickly, but it's just not very efficient. Not the greatest investment, not the greatest results from your investment. All right, moving on. Stage 2 is the Krebs cycle. When oxygen is present, the pyruvic acid passes in. So now we're talking about an aerobic process. The pyruvic acid passes to the second stage. Now we're involving the mitochondria. Okay, so pyruvic acid is broken down into carbon dioxide. And this is taking place, again, in the mitochondria. And you can see high energy electrons from this reaction will move to the third stage. So again, you're not making a lot of ATP yet, but you're setting the stage with these electrons to be able to make a lot more ATP in the final stage of cellular respiration. And that's often referred to as the ETC, or the electron transport chain. So now the electrons that came out of the Krebs cycle, named after one of the people that helped elucidate or bring to light what was going on in those processes, Krebs, right? So now the electron transport chain uses these high energy electrons that came from the Krebs cycle and from glycolysis to convert ADP to ATP. So this is where the majority of the conversion takes place. Again, we're located in the mitochondria when this is happening. At the end of the electron transport chain, there's an enzyme that combines with hydrogen and oxygen, and you end up with water. This is an aerobic process, and from it, you get a total of 32 ATP. So if you look here, cellular respiration converts one glucose, if everything goes well, right? Oxygen's present and all the enzymes that are needed are present, converts one glucose into 36 ATP. So it's really a translation conversion process is what cellular respiration is. Now that ATP can be used for all types of things. All right, you're going to continue working with cellular respiration and do a lab activity, which Ms. Ramsey is going to walk you through. So we will see you soon, and take care.